Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm SkaiiNyght. It's been a minute since I made a video. I've been actually getting used to Fedora, getting everything set up with that. I kind of jumped over because of another YouTuber's channel, the Linux Experiment. Looks like he did a Fedora video quite recently. It looked really cool, so I wanted to jump onto it. And I'm here. I'm on Fedora. It's got the GNOME desktop environment. It's fine. I thought I played around with switching to making it more like a KDE type layout, but this is fine. I kind of enjoy GNOME after kind of forcing myself to use it for a little while. Anyways, today's video I want to actually go through my setup process for how I do PCI Passthrough with Fedora. It's a little different than, say, if you were doing generic Arch. It uses Dracut. Well, I suppose you could use Dracut for Arch. However, Fedora is by default. You use Dracut. So this is kind of a guide for really any system that uses Dracut as a init system. Not an init system, as a way to initialize your init RAM disk. Anyways, let's get into it. Before we get too far, tonight's whiskey is a American single malt from Brickway Distillery. It's not. It's not great. I don't quite care for it. I've had the bottle for quite a while. I'm not sure if it's been featured in a video yet or not, but it tastes like it doesn't know what it's trying to be or what it's going for. Yeah, it's not a great single malt. All right, and a few things before we get started. Number one, I have a rather unique setup. I have a PCI expansion card specifically for adding, I think there's 4 USB 3.0 devices into my VM. It's directly through the PCI, through a PCI card. And I'm using a KVM switch in order to actually switch between my VM and my main computer. So if you don't have a KVM switch or you don't have the PCI expansion thing, this doesn't really show how it works with them, but this should generally work for any purpose that you would have, as long as you're running Dracut for the init RAM disk system, as well as really that's about it. It's pretty much Dracut dependent. Anyways. Well, and I guess partially Fedora dependent, since Fedora uses some slightly different files for configuration than things like Debian or Arch does, specifically with their bootloader for grub. But this method should work with identical GPUs. It won't work for a single GPU that I know of. I'm not sure how you would get that to work, but you can use identical GPUs because we're going to be using the PCI address, not the device ID. All right, well, let's get into it. First thing we're going to want to do is make sure that we have all of the virtualization stuff installed. On Fedora specifically, it's pretty easy to do. So with Fedora, sudo dnf install @virtualization, and that will install the virtualization group. It'll bring everything that you need. If you're on another distribution, it's depending on what distribution it is. Just search for KVM on your distribution, or libvirt, and install the packages for that, and most likely that'll bring everything that you need over. So on Fedora, we're going to want to edit the grub file. For Fedora, this is actually in /edc/sysconfig/grub, compared to really every other every other Linux distribution that I've used before, it's always in /etc/default/grub. So that's the main difference, depending on what distribution you're using. On Fedora, you're going to want the edc sysconfig grub. On, at least I know for Arch and Debian, /edc/default grub is the file you're going to want to edit. And we are going to be looking for this grub command line Linux. And if you're on AMD, you'll see that there is at the very tail end here, there is a AMD_IOMMU equals on. That isn't technically necessary if you have an AMD CPU and it supports IOMMU. It'll just be on in the BIOS. You don't need this. However, if you have a Intel CPU, you will need to add in the line, what is it? Intel_IOMMU equals on, because it is not on by default in your BIOS. But I have AMD. The other thing you're going to want, specifically for Fedora, is this rd.driver.pre equals vfio-pci. And this will just make sure that the VFIO driver is loaded before anything else that has the ability to do. Like specifically with NVIDIA likes to steamroll everything and lay their grubby hands on everything. So I'm not sure if the actual order of these matter. They might. So I always just put the vfio-pci right up front. So write and quit, save that. Now we're going to want to update grub. And again, this is going to be kind of dependent on your distribution, what the exact command is, and specifically for Fedora, if it's a UEFI installation or not. For me, I have a UEFI installation of Fedora, so I'm going to do sudo grub2-make config-o. And then the file that we're going to put it in is /boot/uppercase-EFI/uppercase-EFI/fedora/grub.cfg. And unless you're logged in as the root user, or you just SU into the root user, you won't get any predictive text or helpful text if you do the tab completion on this, because your general user won't have access to that path, but that's what it is. That will create the grub file. Next thing we want to do is you're going to want to take a look at your PCI devices and see which ones you want to keep, or which ones you want to be passed through. To do that, you can do sudo lspci-nnk, and I'm not entirely sure that running this as sudo is actually necessary. It certainly doesn't hurt anything by running it as sudo. But you're going to want to look for something that starts with VGA Compatible. And then there will be a number to the left of it. And it'll be the same number with a audio device. You're going to want to keep both of those, or you're going to want to make note of both of those. So in this instance, I'm going to be passing through my 3080 Ti. So that is address 12:00.0, as well as its audio device, which is 12:00.1. Yours will very likely be something completely different, but you're going to want to make note of this whole number and this whole number, and write them down somewhere, in a separate terminal, or, in Notepad, or really anything. All right, and the next thing that we are going to want to do is we're going to want to create a script that the Dracut initialization system is going to be essentially calling. So now that you have your PCI device IDs, We're going to create the file in /usr/sbin/vfio-pci-override.sh. And it doesn't matter what you call this as long as it's consistent. You'll be referencing this file later. And you'll see that I already have the file created. Make it a little bigger. So we're creating a list of our device locations. So in this case, it's the 12:0.0.0, and you'll notice that there's a prefix of 0000 colon. Unless you have a dual socket system, you're more than likely going to want to use 0000. If you do have a dual socket system, you should probably know what the actual address is before you do this. But if you're just running a single socket, it's overwhelmingly likely going to be this here. So you're going to want the leading 4 zeros colon 12 or whatever your device ID is. So this is the VGA device. This is the VGA's audio device, and audio is how it's going to be getting audio to the virtual machine. So then we're going to create a for loop. So for each location in this location list, we're going to echo out VFIO, and we're going to put vfio-pci, and we're going to put this into this kind of driver override device location. And after that is all done, we're going to run a mod probe just for vfio-pci. And once you have that created, right, and quit that out, and I'll have all of these scripts and basically every command that I'm running here, I'll put it in the description of the video. Next, we're going to want to actually make that executable. So sudo chmod +x /usr sbin vfio-pci-override.sh, or whatever you happen to call it. And this is just making the file itself executable. All right, now we're going to want to create a folder in our Dracut mod path, essentially. To do that, sudo make directory /usr/lib/dracut/modules.d, and then the number of the module may differ depending on your unique setup. To see what number you should use, you can do just an ls command on that directory. So ls/usr/lib/dracut/modules.d, and this is what Dracut will be essentially loading, and it's going to go in order, starting with 00, wrapping around and all the way up to 99. Really, all that you need is to have it loaded prior to whatever type of graphics card you have, whether it be AMD. I'm not sure if you have their proprietary drivers, they'll probably be in here somewhere. Like the NVIDIA ones are 90. I created my VFIO package at 25. 25 should work for you, 20 should work, 30 should probably work. Just really one of the lower numbers to ensure that it's loaded before the actual device drivers are. Okay, so like I said, I did 25, and then depending, you can name this folder whatever you want, but this will have to match a later step. So for this example, I'm calling it, load_VFIO. And instead of actually writing that out, I already have that created, so I'm not going to create it again. All right, and now we're actually going to create a module setup specifically for Dracut, and this is how Dracut will actually perform the loading of in this case, the load VFIO module. So we're going to create another script in that directory. So using whatever text editor you'd like, I prefer Vim. Sudo vim slash usr slash lib slash dracut slash modules.d slash whatever directory you just created slash module-setup.sh. And this is important. The module-setup.sh, it has to be spelled like this. That's one of the requirements for creating a module or creating a custom module in Dracut. So create that, and you'll see the contents of the file here. So it's slightly different than just slash bin slash bash. It's slash or a shebang slash usr slash bin slash bash. We're creating essentially an empty check function that returns 0. We're creating an empty depends function that returns 0, and we're creating an install function. In the install function, we're declaring a mod directory or it's whatever folder you're in, essentially, is how it's going to be working. And then on the next line, we're going to do an install hook. So inst_hook and space pre-udev, so we want this to happen before udev gets loaded. And 00, I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it is necessary. And then we're going to tell it what to write, or what to essentially install. So the moddir, and then this is the name of that script we created. If you remember, it's not actually in that folder yet. We're going to be linking it soon. Close out the install tag and write and quit. And then we're going to go through the process to make that also executable. So sudo chmod +x slash user or slash usr slash lib dracut modules 25 or whatever yours is, module-setup.sh. So that we just made that executable as well. All right, now we're going to actually want to link the script we created in this sbin folder into this vfio folder. So sudo ln-s slash usr slash sbin slash vfio, or whatever you happen to call your thing. And we're going to put that in usr lib dracut modules.d, whatever the name of your directory you created is, and the name that you would like reference. So vfio-pci-override.sh. Again, if you changed it prior to this, make sure it's the same. And I'm not sure what it will do since it's already linked. I don't think it should matter. Okay, well, it already exists. User ears won't exist, so that won't fail for you. And now we're actually going to create the Dracut configuration file for vfio. So sudo vim /edc dracut.conf.d, and this doesn't really matter what it's called. I would just call it vfio.conf because that's what it is. At the top here, we're going to write add_Dracut modules +=, and you want a leading space here because you're appending to a value, you're not setting a value. And the value is going to be a list, so if you don't have the starting and ending, or beginning and trailing spaces, it will essentially sandwich them together. And for this, you're going to want to have this be whatever the folder name was called. So when I created it, mine was 25 load_vfio. If you named yours something else, you would do the actual words here. And then we're going to be telling it to force some drivers to be loaded. So again, force_drivers +=. So since we're appending a value, you want a leading and a trailing space. VFIO, VFIO-PCI, VFIO_IOMMU_type1. And then finally, we're going to have it install some items. And this is, we're actually just setting a value, so we're not appending to it, so you don't need the trailing and leading spaces. So install_items.
So it's slash, it's kind of hard to see here, /usr /sbin /vfio-pci-override.sh, or whatever you happen to call this file. Then we're going to want to do /usr /bin /find, because that's used by the this script. And we're also going to want to do /usr /bin /dirname, because that's also used by the script. So that's just essentially making sure that the script is able to be run. And now that you have those, that should be everything. So we created a /usr /sbin /vfio-pci-override.sh file. We changed that file to be executable. We created a directory in the Dracut modules.d location, preferably with a lower index so that it gets run preferably before any other graphical things get loaded. We created another file in that directory just created called module-setup.sh, and the spelling of all that is very specific. It needs to be spelled exactly this. Then we made that executable. We linked the file that we created earlier into our directory and gave it the same name. And then we created a VFIO configuration file in the dracut.conf.d directory. Next thing to do, make sure everything works. Sudo dracut-fv, give that a run, and everything worked out. It should complete successfully. If it doesn't complete successfully for some reason, don't worry, you didn't break your system. Nothing is actually committed unless this succeeds. So if it doesn't work for whatever reason, go back through the video and look, see what you did differently. But if it did complete, you want to make sure that you're seeing something similar to this here. So we're seeing the custom module load_VFIO. That is the custom Dracut module that we created. And if you called it something else, this is what it would be called. That about wraps it up. I'm going to assume that you know how to use Virt Manager to add PCI hardware. I'm going to assume that you know how to pass in a keyboard and things like that if you're not using a KVM, or if you're not using PCI Passthrough for a USB expansion card. All right, and then if you were to restart your computer, pop up on a terminal again and check out your PCI devices to know that it worked. We'll see here the 12:00-0 and the .1. They are both using the VFIO-PCI drivers. All right, well, that is how you would set up some PCI pass-through for whatever devices you would like on Fedora, or really any system that uses Dracut for a init RAM file system loader. Yeah, that's about it. Well, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm SkaiiNyght. See you later.